Have you ever walked into a room and felt a sudden, inexplicable pull? As if someone's eyes were quietly following you, but the moment you turn to meet their gaze, they look away, a mixture of curiosity and careful restraint lingering in their expression. Perhaps a stranger's lingering glance across a coffee shop, or a coworker's sudden shift in demeanor when you're near, a subtle, almost imperceptible tension in the air. It's not overt. It's not obvious. But it's there. And you've felt it more than once. What if I told you that there are people, perhaps women you interact with every day, who quietly admire you without ever speaking a word of it? Not because you follow society's conventional standards of attractiveness. Not because you're loud, extroverted, or eager to please. But because there's something else about you, something far rarer, something Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology, spent much of his life trying to name. You see, Jung believed that beneath our visible personalities lies a vast, invisible structure, a network of unconscious signals we transmit to others without realizing it. Micro-expressions, energies, behavioral subtleties. And it's often those who possess a certain unconscious alignment with archetypal traits, the sage, the rebel, the protector, the enigma, who silently captivate others on a deeply primal level. You might be one of them. But here's the catch, you probably don't even know it. It's not about physical beauty. Nor is it about wealth, fame, or even social status. Carl Jung proposed that humans are irresistibly drawn to those who reflect back to them their own repressed desires, hidden strengths, or unresolved emotions. The people who quietly haunt the minds of others are often those who have mastered or unknowingly embody the traits others long for within themselves. This video isn't about learning how to become attractive in a superficial sense. It's about uncovering whether you already possess a psychological magnetism you never realized. A force that makes people, particularly women, quietly notice you, long for your attention, and even project their fantasies onto you, while never openly admitting it. And trust me, it's not always a blessing. In fact, it can be isolating. Jung warned that those who unconsciously bear the projections of others often suffer under their weight. The most admired man is often the most misunderstood one. So how do you know if you're one of these people? How do you recognize the signs? In today's video, we're going to unpack 5 unmistakable signs that you are secretly every woman's crush, not in the shallow, passing sense, but on a level that touches something primal, ancient, and deeply psychological. We'll dive into Carl Jung's theory of the anima and animus, the unconscious feminine and masculine aspects that every human carries within them. We'll explore how your unintentional alignment with these archetypes can trigger unconscious fascination in others. We'll talk about the subtle behavioral patterns and energies you project without realizing it, and how women often subconsciously pick up on these cues, becoming inexplicably drawn to you. But fair warning, this isn't a feel-good popularity test. What you'll discover might explain not only the admiration you receive but also the inexplicable distance others maintain, the odd combination of fascination and fear you seem to provoke. Because, as Jung wrote, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. And sometimes those who unknowingly reflect parts of ourselves we cannot face become both irresistible and unsettling. So if you've ever felt like people watch you a little too long, if conversations sometimes shift when you enter a room, or if you've noticed a certain type of attention that no one dares to name, stay with me. Because by the end of this video, you'll know exactly why it happens, what it means, and how to either embrace it or protect yourself from it. Let's begin. To understand why some people, perhaps you, silently capture the fascination of others without even trying, we need to venture into the shadowy corridors of the human psyche. And there's no better guide for this than Carl Jung. Jung spent much of his life studying the invisible threads that bind us to one another. He believed that every person carries within them a rich, ancient library of archetypes, universal, symbolic patterns of behavior inherited from our collective unconscious. These archetypes aren't just stories or myths, they're active, living blueprints for human desire, fear, and fascination. And when someone embodies an archetype in its pure, unfiltered form, especially unconsciously, it awakens something primal in the people around them. One of Jung's most important insights revolves around the concept of anima and animus, the unconscious feminine side within every man and the unconscious masculine side within every woman. To Jung, the anima isn't just a soft, romantic aspect within a man. She is a guide to the depths of his unconscious, the bridge between his rational ego and his instinctual, intuitive nature. Likewise, the animus in a woman is not merely strength and rationality, it's a collection of male archetypes formed by her experience with men, culture, and inherited patterns. But here's where it gets interesting. When a man unconsciously integrates aspects of his anima balancing emotional awareness, vulnerability, intuitive wisdom, and enigmatic charisma, it creates a kind of psychic signature that women can detect, often without fully understanding why. Why? Because he embodies not just one archetype, but the projection of what a woman's unconscious longs for, a man in touch with qualities she herself may have suppressed or idealized. And these unconscious projections are powerful. As Jung said, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. So, when you naturally possess this balanced energy without trying to perform it, without faking softness or mystique, it pulls at something buried within those around you. The effect is rarely conscious. It lives in the subtext, in subtle looks, in unexpected hesitations, and in the unspoken. Jung also believed that we all carry psychic energy, a form of emotional and psychological power that can be directed inward towards self-understanding or outward toward others. Most people leak their psychic energy constantly, through overexposure, excessive validation seeking, aimless chatter, and trying to please everyone. In doing so, they become spiritually lightweight. But a person who naturally contains their energy, one who speaks less than they know, listens more than they reveal, and moves with intention, begins to generate what Jung called emotional gravity. It's this gravity that draws people in. Not the loudest man in the room, but the quiet one with piercing eyes and an unsettling calm. Not the one constantly advertising his worth, but the one seemingly at peace with his own mystery. You might notice that people unconsciously test your reactions, drop cryptic comments, or seek your approval in subtle ways. They sense your contained energy and can't help but want to tap into it. This is often one of the earliest signs that you are silently becoming someone's hidden fascination. Among Jung's collection of archetypes, there's one particularly tied to attraction, though it's not the lover nor the hero. It's the enigma. The enigma is the person who carries an air of mystery, contradiction, and hidden depths. Someone who reveals enough to spark interest but conceals enough to keep people guessing. Why is this attractive? Because, according to Jung, humans are not just drawn to what they understand, they are magnetized by what they cannot fully grasp. The enigma becomes a canvas upon which others paint their fantasies, projections, and suppressed desires. If you find yourself frequently misunderstood, often assumed to be more dangerous, more seductive, or more emotionally complex than you consciously present, it's likely you're embodying this archetype. Women are particularly sensitive to this. The enigma evokes their anima's projections, a mysterious figure who seems to carry the answers to unasked questions or the reflection of qualities they've yet to claim for themselves. Carl Jung warned that projections, while flattering, are dangerous both for the person projecting and for the one receiving them. When someone projects their ideal onto you, they aren't falling for you as you are. They're falling for the parts of themselves they've buried, stitched together in your silhouette. You might notice women around you projecting in subtle ways. They become unusually nervous or awkward in your presence, as if confronting something they can't name. They oscillate between seeking closeness and pulling away without clear reason. Conversations with them feel loaded with subtext, glances held just a second too long. They make assumptions about your character, imagining you to be far more dangerous, romantic, or emotionally deep than you've expressed. Or they test your emotional availability through seemingly casual remarks, jokes, or challenges. These are not conscious manipulations but unconscious attempts to see if you are the figure they sense you might be. Jung's theory of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we deny or suppress, also plays a crucial role in hidden attraction. People are magnetically drawn to those who embody aspects of their own shadow. If a woman has been raised to repress assertiveness, mystery, or emotional independence, she may find herself irresistibly drawn to a man who quietly radiates those qualities. The paradox is that this fascination often comes with fear. She might feel both compelled and unsettled by you, admire you but keep her distance. Because to be near you is to face the parts of herself she's long buried. You might find yourself constantly oscillating between being confided in and kept at arm's length. Real-life example, the silent charmer. Consider the case of Alain Delon, the iconic French actor of the 1960s. He was undeniably handsome, yes, but it was his silence, his steady gaze, and his refusal to chase attention that made him an object of obsession. Women projected onto him a multitude of fantasies: the dangerous lover, the tragic hero, the wounded soul. Delon rarely spoke of his personal life in interviews. He remained aloof, enigmatic. And the less he revealed, the more people speculated, desired, and obsessed. Delon embodied the enigma archetype, the balanced anima, and emotional gravity, whether he knew it or not. You may not be a movie star, but if you carry similar traits, you've likely noticed the same pattern in your own life. Attention you didn't seek. fascination you didn't ask for. Finally, Carl Jung believed that certain behaviors and mannerisms trigger unconscious archetypal memories in others. It might be the way you hold eye contact, the tone of your voice, the way you move through a room. A calm, unhurried demeanor can evoke the protector archetype. A slightly detached, thoughtful nature can trigger the sage. A quiet confidence paired with emotional restraint might awaken the rebel. These triggers bypass logical attraction and tap into something older, something ancient. It's why sometimes someone who isn't conventionally attractive still possesses a room-dominating allure. Because the unconscious isn't bound by societal beauty standards, it responds to symbolic energy. What makes this entire phenomenon philosophically profound is that it reveals how little of human connection is conscious. We like to think we choose who we admire or desire based on logic, compatibility, or appearance. But Jung reminds us that most of our longings, attractions, and fascinations are projections, mirrors held up by others reflecting the unseen parts of ourselves. And so, if you've ever wondered why certain people seem inexplicably drawn to you, or why attention sometimes feels more like a burden than a gift, you're likely carrying a powerful archetypal presence without realizing it. In the next section, we'll explore how these unconscious dynamics create unsettling tensions, why people might admire you but keep their distance, or become both fascinated and intimidated. And we'll reveal the deeper, sometimes uncomfortable truths about what it means to be silently desired. Are you ready to go deeper? Now that we've uncovered the invisible mechanics behind unconscious attraction, the archetypes, psychic energy, and projections that shape people's responses to you, it's time to pull back the curtain on the unsettling truths these dynamics carry. Because what Jung realized, and what few ever admit, is that this kind of silent magnetism, this invisible gravitational pull you may possess, doesn't always make life easier. In fact, it often complicates it. And those who become objects of unconscious fascination are not always celebrated. They are misunderstood, avoided, even quietly resented. When someone projects their inner world onto you, what they see isn't really you. It's a reflection of their own unmet needs, suppressed desires, and buried fears. Jung warned of this danger when he wrote, "The projection carries the subject's own unconscious content outward as if it belonged to the other person." In simpler terms, people fall for the part of themselves they see in you, not for you as you are. This explains why you might experience a strange paradox in your relationships with others, especially women: admiration from a distance, discomfort up close. Fascination paired with defensiveness. Romantic assumptions made about you that feel out of nowhere. A strange heaviness in social spaces, as if people expect something from you without knowing what. And this is where things get complicated. Because while it's flattering to be desired, it's suffocating to become a screen for other people's projections. You cease to be a person in their eyes. You become a story they're telling themselves: the dangerous lover, the tender healer, the rebel outsider, the misunderstood genius. And no matter what you do, you will never quite fit the mold they've made for you. Another unsettling revelation is the way this kind of magnetism creates both distance and false closeness. On one hand, women may feel drawn to confide in you quickly, oversharing personal struggles or seeking your emotional validation far earlier than is appropriate. There's an unspoken assumption that you'll understand, that you'll be emotionally available in ways others aren't. And yet, paradoxically, they'll often pull away the moment you begin to show genuine vulnerability in return. Why? Because the projection was never meant to be reciprocal. You were never supposed to be a real person. You were meant to play a role, an archetype that suits their unconscious script. When you step outside of that role, it destabilizes the fantasy, and instinctively they retreat. This is why people may flirt with you but hesitate to commit. Why they might admire you but never fully let you in. Why conversations are charged with tension but never resolve. It isn't your fault. It's the collision of your archetypal presence with their repressed psyche. Jung observed that what people desire most often terrifies them. Not because the object of desire is dangerous, but because it forces them to confront parts of themselves they've long buried. A woman drawn to your quiet authority might also fear the loss of control it triggers in her. One captivated by your emotional depth may recoil from what it awakens in her own long-denied feelings. Another who admires your rebellious spirit might unconsciously dread what it reveals about her own unexpressed defiance. You'll notice this in small but revealing ways: intense eye contact quickly broken. Conversations that veer into emotional depth before being abruptly steered away. Playful teasing that masks genuine tension. An almost palpable anxiety when physical proximity increases. They desire you, yes, but on an unconscious level, being near you threatens their fragile self-concept. It makes them feel things they aren't ready to feel. And rather than face those emotions, people often distance themselves from their triggers. Why you'll often be misunderstood. The deeper tension is that those who possess this kind of silent allure are often deeply misunderstood, because most people are only comfortable with what they can easily categorize. They like to assign neat, predictable labels: the nice guy, the bad boy, the intellectual, the romantic. But when you carry multiple archetypes, when you're both compassionate and cold, deeply introspective yet outwardly composed, emotionally available but mysteriously self-contained, you unsettle them. You defy their categories. And what cannot be categorized cannot be controlled. Carl Jung believed that this is one of the reasons society resists true individuation, the process of becoming a fully integrated, self-actualized individual. Because an individuated person threatens the collective order. They remind others of the unlived parts of their own souls. So if you've ever been accused of being too intense, too distant, too complicated, or too hard to read, know this: it isn't about you. It's about the discomfort your presence stirs in others. There's a darker side to this dynamic. Sometimes unconscious desire, especially when repressed or denied, morphs into subtle resentment. If a woman finds herself drawn to you in ways she can't explain or justify, if she resents the vulnerability it awakens in her, she might unconsciously blame you for it. You'll notice passive-aggressive remarks, sudden coldness, or emotional withdrawal. Not because you've wronged her, but because your presence mirrors something unresolved within her. Jung noted that these projection dynamics, when left unchecked, often lead to emotional shadowboxing, where people unconsciously act out inner conflicts through their relationships without understanding why. And if you're frequently on the receiving end of intense, contradictory emotions, affection one day, distance the next, it's likely you're caught in the crosshairs of someone else's unconscious battle. Modern psychology has since validated much of what Jung intuited a century ago. Studies in nonverbal communication show that people pick up on subtle, unconscious cues: posture, vocal tonality, micro-expressions, and form instantaneous, instinctive impressions. Research in affective neuroscience reveals that much of human attraction operates outside conscious awareness. Brain imaging studies show that we register attraction in primitive, emotional brain regions long before our logical minds catch up. This is why you might walk into a room and feel a shift in atmosphere without anyone speaking. Why people might be drawn to you or react with unexplainable discomfort. Your psychic energy, the way you carry yourself, the calm or storm you radiate, is perceived before a single word is spoken. It's a strange kind of gift, this invisible magnetism. To be both sought after and held at a distance. To be admired and misunderstood in equal measure. To feel deeply known by strangers, yet perpetually unknown in return. Jung believed that those who possess this archetypal presence live on the edges of collective consciousness. They are not fully of the world, nor entirely outside it. They dwell in a liminal space, a threshold between the seen and the unseen. And it can be a lonely place. The paradox of being seen and unseen. Perhaps the most unsettling revelation is this: you may be secretly every woman's crush, but few will ever truly see you. They'll see the archetype you represent to them, the fantasy you unconsciously fulfill, the parts of themselves they project onto you. But to be seen as you are, in all your complexity, your contradictions, your silent battles, is rare. And this, Jung wrote, is both the burden and the privilege of those who carry the archetypes. In the next section, we'll reach the turning point. The moment where we reveal the most counterintuitive truth of all. That this magnetic presence, while powerful, can quietly sabotage your relationships, your peace of mind, and your ability to be loved for your authentic self. And we'll explore how to reclaim control over this force, so you no longer become a canvas for other people's projections, but a sovereign force in your own life. Are you ready for the revelation? And now we arrive at the moment few ever realize, and even fewer dare to admit. You see, we spend so much of our lives believing that to be desired is to be valued. That if someone is drawn to us, especially in silent, unspoken ways, it must be a blessing, a mark of worth, a symbol of our quiet power. But Carl Jung knew better. And here's the revelation. What makes you silently desirable to others is often the very thing that makes it impossible for them to truly love you. Because as long as people are projecting their unconscious fantasies, unresolved wounds, and archetypal longings onto you, they are not loving you. They're loving a reflection of themselves in your silhouette. And this is why, despite the glances, the cryptic texts, the emotional confessions at odd hours, the conversations thick with subtext, it rarely becomes something real, something clean, something whole. They fall for the enigma, the rebel, the sage, the dangerous protector. But those are only fragments of you. They are masks your presence awakens in their unconscious minds. And while those masks can captivate, they can never sustain a relationship built on truth. Jung warned of this trap. The greatest tragedy of the psyche is to be perpetually misunderstood by those who think they love you. And so here's the most counterintuitive truth of all. The power you hold, this magnetic pull you never asked for, is a double-edged sword. It draws people close, but keeps them from ever truly seeing you. It's the reason some connections feel loaded with potential, only to fizzle into awkward distance. The reason people seem captivated by your presence, yet hesitant to claim it. The reason you're admired, but rarely chosen. Because to claim you would require them to abandon their projection, to confront themselves, to stop chasing the fantasy and face the reality of you. In all your nuance, your darkness, your contradictions, your sovereign complexity. And most people aren't brave enough for that. It's easier to desire you from a distance than to love you up close. In this way, being the secret crush, the unconscious obsession, isn't a privilege. It's a lonely kind of exile. But it doesn't have to stay that way. In our final section, we'll explore how to reclaim control over this magnetic presence. How to stop being a canvas for other people's projections and start becoming a force so self-aware, so sovereign, that only those willing to meet you in your fullness will ever get close. Let's finish this. So, where does this leave you? If you've recognized yourself in the signs we've explored, the quiet gravity, the tension in the air when you enter a room, the fascination coupled with unease, the conversations that feel weighted with things left unsaid, you now know why it happens. And more importantly, you understand the cost of it. Carl Jung spent his life warning about the dangers of unconscious projections, both for those who cast them and for those who unknowingly receive them. Because when you become the screen onto which others project their desires, their shadows, their archetypal longings, you stop being a person in their eyes. And you become a symbol of what they long for, what they fear, and what they're not ready to claim within themselves. But here's the truth Jung would want you to know. You don't have to remain trapped in that role. The first step is awareness. To recognize when you're being cast as someone's fantasy instead of being seen as yourself. To notice when conversations feel more like performances, when affection feels like a projection, when closeness comes with unspoken expectations. When you sense it, pause. Not to reject them, but to decide whether you wish to play along. Because the danger isn't in being desired. It's in unconsciously allowing yourself to be reshaped by other people's fantasies. Reclaim your psychic energy. Jung believed that individuation, the process of becoming your whole, integrated self, begins when you reclaim your psychic energy from the external world. Stop leaking it into spaces where you're merely a projection. Withdraw it from relationships built on archetypal fantasies. Refuse to perform roles you never auditioned for. Redirect that energy inward toward self-discovery, toward your own depths. The quieter your psychic field becomes, the easier it is to sense who truly sees you and who only sees themselves reflected in you. Set clear boundaries. One of the simplest, most powerful ways to protect yourself from becoming a vessel for projection is to set clear, conscious boundaries. Not every glance needs to be met. Not every cryptic message requires a reply. Not every conversation thick with subtext needs to be indulged. You are not obligated to entertain someone's unconscious fantasies. Your presence is a gift, and not everyone is entitled to it. Allow yourself to be seen. Most importantly, give yourself permission to be seen as you are. In all your contradictions, your darkness and your light, your tenderness and your indifference, your wisdom and your foolishness. The people who are capable of truly loving you, of standing beside you without trying to tame or possess you, are the ones who will love you as a sovereign, integrated being, not as an archetype. And those people are rare, but they do exist. Philosophical reflection. In the end, this isn't just about attraction. It's about the way we as human beings carry ancient, unspoken longings within us. The way we use one another as mirrors. The way we fall not for people but for the forgotten parts of ourselves that they awaken. And perhaps the greatest act of love is to see someone, not as a projection, not as an archetype, but as a whole, sovereign soul. To desire them not because they complete you, but because they stand complete on their own. Carl Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And maybe, just maybe, the second privilege is to be loved for that. A question for you. So now, I'll leave you with a question. Have you ever sensed this in your own life? Notice the tension, the fascination, the silent attention that follows you? And more importantly, how have you handled it? Let us know in the comments below. And if this video resonated with you, if it stirred something ancient and unnamed within you, hit that like button, subscribe, and share this with someone you know has felt this way too. Because some conversations are too rare, too beautiful, and too honest to be left unspoken. Until next time, stay unseen, but never unknown.